Given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, 540-0580. Still a little snarl out there coming over here today. Took a little longer than normal. Have to keep diverting around the south side of the city and coming up the 83 way. So, but we're still on at the Harrisburg Beer and Cigar today at 4 o'clock for our cigar and gun chat. Come on over. We're going to be in the lounge. We're going to smoke cigars. We're going to talk about guns, gun rights, gun laws, and anything else you guys want to talk about legal related. And that's at Harrisburg Beer and Cigar, which is over on 3842 Union Deposit Road, which is over by the Lowe's in the plaza over there, across from, the Texas Roadhouse. So come on over. They've got great beer, great cigars, really neat walk-in humidor. It's not a little thing at all, so I think you'd be really impressed. Now, it's a bring-your-own cigar event, which means you buy your own cigars. So when you get over there, you buy a couple cigars if you want to smoke one. With us and talk about the gun law. Of course, you don't have to smoke, but you will be in a smoke-filled environment, so don't bring your 8-year-old. Somebody asked, and I'm like, what? What else do I want to let people know? CDL Labor Logistics out of Carlisle seeking experienced, qualified commercial drivers with clean records. Call them at 866-293-1880. And I'm going to they're going to sponsor the show, so I was going to put an ad together for them, but apparently they need the drivers so badly right now, they wanted me to just go ahead and do some live reads, so that's why I'm annoying you with it. So these guys, CDL Labor Logistics in Carlisle, 866-293-1880. Of course, if you call in, we can give you the number as well. But if you're a commercial driver out there and you got a clean record, you're looking for a good, high-paying job, they've got them. And, of course, May 18th, we'll be at the Lancaster County Women's Expo. And earlier this week, I spoke at the Chambersburg 912 Patriots. I want to thank them for hosting me and giving me their time. They were very nice people. They were attentive, had a lot of great questions. And, again, if you have a group or an organization that meets – and you're looking to have somebody come in and talk about some aspect of law, we're happy to do it. 540-0580. And Will, you're on the air.
Yes, this is Will.
Yep.
Somebody's been getting into my father's house, and I have a game camera, like you shoot the deer and stuff. Can I record? It has a recorder with the video. Is that legal in PA to record sound inside the house?
Well, you can't record sound where people have a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Like if it's in the living room, not like a bathroom or something?
Right. And I would think, for all intensive purposes, an intruder would not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your house.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Good luck.
Have a good weekend.
Go get them. 540-0580. Yeah, in Pennsylvania, we have these weird rules on recording things. And notice how he said about sound, because you can record video under Pennsylvania's Wiretap Act without any problem as long as it doesn't pick up the sound. On the other hand, you can record anybody on video you want in a public area because there's no expectation of privacy, and even pick up their sound communications without any problem. So keep that in mind as well. And we get this a lot in custody cases or other types of cases, but a lot of times in divorce and custody. Well, I have a tape that proves, and that's when my red flag goes up, because not only is it a felony to make the tape, but it's a felony to play the tape. And I can't counsel you to destroy evidence, so I stop the client right away and say, now listen, if you had a tape and you'd made a tape, I couldn't counsel you to destroy the tape because that would be counseling you to destroy the fruits of a crime. So we can't go there. And I know you weren't about to tell me that you recorded anybody secretly or without their consent, because if you did that, then that would lead to that other conversation that we couldn't have. So let's just move on. And some clients go, but no, I have a really good tape, and it shows blah, 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 blah. And I go, oh. And then I go, any chance it's got an answering machine? And they say, well, yeah, it's from an answering machine. Okay, well, if it's from an answering machine, there's, again, no expectation of privacy there. That's a little different. The person has voluntarily recorded their voice. The problem is when people don't know they're being recorded and it's involuntary under Pennsylvania law, that is not a good idea. Oh, what else do we know? Well, we talked about this. I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but the Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice is going to have to send out Jane Orey, disgraced for using her sister's senatorial office and her her sister who worked for her in the Superior Court as campaign staff and using the staff to run her campaign, has to write a personal apology to every judge in Pennsylvania. But not just on a piece of paper, on a photograph of herself that she has to have made at her own expense and mail out to every judge in Pennsylvania at her own expense. I guess it'd be probably like 1,000 folks or so will be getting that. And I was joking on the Durgan show yesterday, it'd be interesting to see if any of those will become available on eBay for resale and what those would go for. Kind of an odd sentence. I mean, she got house arrest and probation and some other things. She has to work in a soup kitchen, and then she can only leave the house to also go to church. So the judge made it not the posh form of house arrest, but the much more, much less fun version. Talk line number, by the way, is 540-0580. We got some openings on the board right now, so if you want to get in here and you have a legal question, it doesn't matter what it's about. If it's about child custody, got a neighbor's tree problem, get a lot of those. You had a bad car accident, and it seems to be all the rage right now since the entire conduit around this town is shut down. Oh, let's talk about this, by the way. On your way to a merge point, you don't have to, when it says right lane closed 2 miles ahead, okay? Think about this. Right lane closed 2 miles ahead. Who knows how long a mile is? It's really long, okay? Even at 60 miles an hour, it will take you, pop quiz, how many minutes to cover 2 miles? 2 minutes, you're right. So, point being, you come up on that and you see it. So everybody starts cramming into the right lane and creates this giant traffic jam. Take both lanes to the merge point and weave in at the merge point. You will make traffic faster for everybody. So keep that in the back of your head. A lot of people don't seem to understand that. Charlie, you're on the air. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Carl, how are you?
Good.
I have a question and a comment, and it's the question is just a yes or no question. A friend and I were drinking a couple of Yingling lagers.
Okay.
And he brought up the castle doctrine of this Commonwealth, and he claims that hypothetically in the evening he's asleep, the afternoon, the night, whatever, and he hears a rattling in his living room, and he gets up and he goes out into his living room, and somebody's there in his living room. To quote him, he says, "That person's made a fatal mistake." And I said, I don't think it's that cut and dry. And then I'll give you my comment, and then you can answer my question. In terms of these accidents around here, I'm not going to tell you who I drive for locally. Well, I guess I will. I drive for UPS. And as a professional driver, there's no excuse for any of this, none. I don't want to hear anybody say that people are distracted. You as a professional driver, it doesn't matter what Joe Public's doing, you have a responsibility to maintain a high lead time, maintaining a constant state of situational awareness. Mm-hmm. I just read the article this morning, and you can read it for yourself in the Sentinel, that I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting, the driver was not able to stop in time. That is so weak. I'm driving my equipment with my high lead time, like where I'm driving that truck, no less than a half mile ahead. Obviously, corners and hills change that variable, but I have a significant following distance. I'm reducing my speed. It's pathetically sad and weak. Like the tanker driver that rolled his truck on that 322 West. Seriously? I get it that we don't get IQ tests to maintain these licenses, but seriously, that is so weak. Think about it. If nobody, even Joe Public, doesn't agree with what I'm saying, this should make sense to anybody. You're pulling around upwards of 5,000 gallons of fuel. Right. Wouldn't you be reducing your speed? Wouldn't you be the vehicle out there that's annoying everybody? What is this guy's problem? And then this guy with 5,000 gallons of fuel goes into that curve, and then he's going to say something weak like he was startled, he was distracted, he had to swerve to avoid something. No, shut your mouth when you're talking to me. Shut your mouth when you're talking to me. No, you didn't. You're weak, you're pathetic, and you've got the whole mid-East Coast, Central PA, all screwed up now because of you. But that's my comment, and then you can answer my...
I can see you have a strong opinion on this. The answer is, and I want you to think about this, we get this one with the crack dealers too, right? We go, why on earth would you be driving down the road with a kilo of cocaine in your car with a headlight out going 85 miles an hour on the interstate, wondering why the cops have pulled you over and there's a drug-sniffing dog out there? Wouldn't you have a chase car? You got $100,000 worth of drugs. Wouldn't you have a chase car and a car in front, looking around and making sure all your stuff's working? Wouldn't you do an equipment check every hour or so?
Right.
But for some reason, human nature being what it is, crack dealers and drivers included, not everybody does all the things they could or should do.
I don't know. I'm not on a podium for myself, but it's a statement of fact, not fabricated fiction, what have you, metaphorically. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I can tell you with 100% certainty, I've never had a, oh my gosh, that could have been bad situation because I'm on point.
Right. Well, that's your job, right? And so here's the thing. We expect my mechanic to get the job. So I always get a little miffed when I hear people talk about the trucks. You know, they always complain about the trucks, and I always want to be like, listen, the average CDL driver is a lot better driver than the average regular driver. So I would stop worrying about the trucks and start worrying about the teenagers and the 87-year-old blind guy.
Right.
All right, my friend, I got to go to break.
All right. Hey, can you answer the gun question when you come back?
Yes, I will.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Charles.
All right. Well, let's go back to that gun question for a quick second. Yes, you don't have to retreat inside your own house, but you can't just shoot somebody because they're in there. We don't have our castle doctrine as it's been adopted in Pennsylvania is not a you can just shoot. You still have to have a reasonable fear for your life. However, we've said that the fact that a person is intruding gives a presumption that that is the case. But a presumption is not a end-all. It could be rebutted. And so, yeah, a prosecutor could say, well, we start from the proposition that when you wake up in the middle of the night and somebody's scratching around in your living room, you have the presumption of the right to use deadly force. But under these circumstances, I can show you why that's not the case. Because as the guy was coming down the stairs, the person said, hey, what's going on? And the lights went on and it was a 12-year-old, you know, or some such thing where some fact came to light, making the person look or showing that the person was no danger, or it turned out to be the, what do I want to say, the autistic neighbor next door, you know, 12-year-old who wandered in the house in the middle of the night, or something that you should have known or could have known under the circumstances. And when the guy says, well, yeah, you know, I heard the scratching down there, and I ran around the corner with my gun, and I pulled it up, and I started pulling the trigger, and I was like, oh, look, that's Johnny, the neighbor boy. When did you know it was Johnny, the neighbor boy, and know he was harmless? And that's the problem. That presumption could be rebutted. So I think the answer is don't use lethal force unless you have to. That's usually our argument, by the way. 540-0580, Carl Rominger here, coming to you live on WHP 580. Tom, you're on the air.
Carl, thank you for taking my phone call. I got two questions for you. One is the child endangerment, and the other one is final restraining orders. The first one, child endangerment, this is the situation.
Okay.
And this is a real good one, too. I noticed that on my neighborhood that one of the neighbors set up a basketball court on the street. The neighbor across the street said, boy, that's a really good idea. I'm going to set up my basketball court on a public street. Now, my question is, what are the implications of the law by creating an environment on the street,
right,
such as a playground, and does it fall under child endangerment?
Good question.
You got to remember that a parent authorized a playing instrument to be on a public street, creating a
Well, I got to ask this question.
Creating a playground environment on a public street, which is child endangerment, reckless endangerment.
It's a community standard, and I'll explain it this way. When I was a kid, it seemed to me, I grew up in the country, but before I moved to the country, I lived in the suburbs as a very little child. And we would go back and visit sometimes. And I seem to remember that people would play ball in the street. They'd set up nets in the road and play hockey. And it was called street hockey.
Yeah.
And so the answer is, I think if you get your kids out on Interstate 81, well, there's nothing going on there now, but generally that would be a problem. If you live in the cul-de-sac area, it probably is a tragedy waiting to happen under some circumstances, but millions and millions of boys and girls have survived playing in the streets, sometimes because that's the only area in their neighborhoods to play in. So I'm not certain that that's per se child endangerment, although I can guarantee you that the safety Nazis that exist in full force these days will certainly find it to be offensive.
Well, Carl, even when people are on the phone texting while they're driving, right, which does not create a endangered environment?
Well, the most dangerous thing people do in the car is eat.
Well, okay.
And they've been doing that forever. But my point is, I understand your theory of how it could be child endangerment. But I think it's a case-by-case situation.
Well, the reason I'm saying this is because I was hit by a car, and I told my neighbors about it, and they think I'm stupid or something. And I told them, I said, you know what? It doesn't take very much for somebody to be driving, talking on their cell phone or texting while a kid decides to come in between cars and then play basketball in the street, which I believe is child endangerment. Not only that, especially if you have custody of your children and you're having them play in the street, which can end up in domestic court. But
it can. In fact, I've had opinions that I've seen where the courts have said Dad can't fly with his kid in the airplane between Pittsburgh and central Pennsylvania because that's excessively dangerous.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess that kind of answers my question. The other one is final restraining orders. I got a case where a gentleman has a final restraining order for 25 years. Now, here's the thing. What are the odds of getting a final restraining order dismissed if there's no violation?
If there's been no violation, if we're talking about a final restraining order, what state?
New Jersey, the People's Republic.
Oh, see. Yeah, and I don't know the answer on that one because we don't have such a beast here. We have the PFA, which expires after 3 years or has to be renewed. But it can be terminated at any time by application of either party.
Well, New Jersey doesn't. It's for if you don't do nothing or make any moves, it pretty much stays there in place.
Right.
Unbelievable. So Pennsylvania's 3 years then, right?
Yeah. Although it can be extended, so you have to be careful. All right.
But they have to be notified if it's going to be extended.
That's correct.
Right?
There should be a hearing on it. But wouldn't be the first time I've heard of somebody getting something done to them by court without knowing about it until after the fact. And then when you eventually untangle it, you've already spent some time in jail.
Really?
Or like a client I have right now who didn't realize the PFA was still in effect because he thought it was dropped because that was what he was told. But the person who told it to him was the person who got it against him, and she didn't understand that she hadn't fully dropped it. Her lawyer had just modified it. And they didn't have any problems except that he went to buy a firearm and got zapped for being subject to a PFA. And, of course, he's like, I was told it was dropped, and I figured that was good enough. And I understand why he believes that because he was told that. The wife says that. She says, I told him it was dropped. I thought it was dropped. I didn't understand that my lawyer just modified it.
Yeah, but you can't buy a firearm. If a final restraining order is already in the system, you can't buy a firearm.
Well, once it expires, you can. So
once it's been through the computer and they not either expired it, but it was dismissed and
right. And his problem was it hadn't happened yet. So of course, when he filled out the little yellow sheet, he said, "No, I'm not currently subject to a PFA." Mm-hmm. And my point on that just is sometimes the information people get, he wasn't aware of the actual proceeding or the paperwork that happened on the modification. And he just took his wife's word for it that it was dropped because that was her terminology.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. You always could trust your wife or your girlfriend, whatever.
Right.
So, okay, thanks.
Or your boyfriend.
All right, take care.
All right. Oh, boy. 540-0580. Jason, you're on the air.
Hey, Carl, how are you?
Good.
Hey, I got a question about LLCs. I started an LLC a couple of years ago for a rental property. I have a couple rental properties. Okay. And I was wondering, if you want to start a different business it encompasses a completely different subject matter, can it go under the same LLC?
Unless the LLC has a operating agreement that restricts its scope of action, it can go under any LLC, even the one you already have. So,
I'm sorry, say that last part again.
It can go under that LLC. So in the old days, when you had a corporation, you had to declare what it was going to be for. And an LLC is sort of like a hybrid form of a corporation that's come around later. But you would go to the Queen and you would say, hey, I want to import tea from India. And voila, you're now the East India Tea Company, okay?
Right.
And then you would go to the Queen and say, I want to make mustard. And she'd say, okay, you're now Coleman's. By appointment of Her Majesty, you may make mustard. So originally, corporations had a charter. And that charter control what they could do. And if they did something that wasn't inside their charter, it was called an ultra vires action, and they couldn't do it. And so you could shut, if you as a shareholder or as a interested party, you could prevent the corporation from acting outside its charter. However, under the modern corporation laws and the LLC laws, etc., it basically says for any business purpose. So legally, you start out being able to do any lawful business, basically. And then you can circumscribe it by your own internal documents, bylaws, and orders, and, all those good things.
Yeah, there's no restrictions internally on it. I didn't think there were any restrictions on any business. I just wanted to make sure before I proceeded with
talk to your accountant, too, about whether or not your new line of business is best kept inside the LLC or not kept inside the LLC, or whether there might be some advantages to having more than one entity.
Yeah, that was my next step.
All right.
I have another question for you. I know you had the intellectual property lawyer on a couple of weeks ago.
Kelly Keller.
Yeah. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but in terms of intellectual property, if I have a logo I want to trademark, and I go to somebody because I want the logo, I have the logo, but I want to create it on a computer and don't have the means to do it on a computer, it's still my property because I'm hiring them to create it. Not
Correct.
to create it, but to put it in computerized format for me.
I think that's correct. I remember what she was talking about is when you have somebody mark it up, the copyright, I think, actually you can have dual ownership in it somehow, but you can have that person in the beginning when you hire them restrict what they can do with it. I'm thinking that's right. I'm trying to remember if the patent, which one was one of them. There's sort of a weird dual ownership for the creator, but the beneficial interest belongs to. So
that involved that you were the employee of a company that chartered you to create it for them. Yeah.
Right.
This is I've created it and I just want it put on.
Right. So you're going to hire somebody to do it for you.
Yeah.
I would still recommend getting in writing that they're going to be given information, including information about logo, trademarks, and other potentially copyrighted materials, and they agree not to share them, disseminate them, or profit from them later.
Yeah, just get them to sign off that it's still mine, yeah.
All right, brother. Got to go to break.
All right, thanks.
540-0580. Oh, yeah, it's some bad music there. You know what movie this is from, Art? Oh, come on. It's little Bon Jovi. Talking about the Republic of New Jersey earlier. Oh, you don't know. Oh, Young Guns. Billy the Kid, man. Good Lord. All right, well, all these cowboy hats around here think they would know. Which reminds me, send in Walker, Texas Ranger, to check out the fertilizer plant, right? That's what they're going to do. Which also reminds me that Chuck Norris, they were going to put him on Mount Rushmore, but the granite wasn't hard enough for him. All right, anyhow, there's a whole series of Chuck Norris stories. Mike, you're on WHP 580. What's going on?
How's Carl today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm going to go to Smoke Cigars and talk about guns at 4 o'clock at the Harrisburg Beer and Cigar over on Union Deposit. I'm hoping people will show up for it. A little trafficy out there, but you can still get there, and they got beer and cigars. So what more do you need?
Yeah, I agree. Hey, this truck driver that upset that, what do you think the ramifications? This guy has created havoc I haven't seen in Harrisburg area in years, not counting just realizing what it's going to cost the taxpayers to fix that bridge. State workers all let out 2 hours early. I had to go to Harrisburg. It was a nightmare. And it was something I had to be at 6 o'clock at graduation, and just trying to get in Harrisburg, it took me an hour and a half.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I dropped the ball in the championship softball game, and I still hear about it.
Oh, so well, I don't think this guy's going to be driving truck for the rest of his life.
So these things have a way of sticking with you. That said, the answer
I know he didn't kill anybody, but my God.
Yeah, and the answer is it was an accident. Now, some accidents have greater consequences than others, right?
Yeah, but you tip over a truck. It's usually you're going too fast. Isn't that the case?
That's usually the case. But I'm just saying, but it's an accident. And so it's human negligence. So if let he who is without sin cast the first stone, so to speak.
Well, that's true. But...
And so human negligence is just, so here's the thing I hear people say. We had a driver on earlier, which I respect his position.
Yeah, I agree with him.
But here's the answer. Why is it, for instance, I don't know if there's a lot of great studies out there on engineering, okay? And when it comes to dealing with human beings, you have to over-engineer everything because people simply won't do what they need to do. So, for instance, if you put a button on a Pepsi machine you've got to over-engineer the button because people won't just push the button. They'll press on the button with their full body weight.
Well, that's true.
And my point being is just that we all go through life like a bunch of meatheads. We're good at what we do and what we're focused on, but we probably all make mistakes that we don't even realize we make because most of them never lead to a bad consequence.
Well, that's true. And nobody's perfect, guy.
Right, and so I'm just saying,
wow.
I'm not for saddling any human being with all the incidental and consequential ripples that come from an accident like this. If he tipped over his truck, he's certainly responsible for maintaining a safe speed. There seems to be some scuttlebutt on my Facebook page. Mr. Fish believes that he was cut off by a four-wheeler. Of course, all truck drivers.
So where it happened.
All truck drivers believe that accidents are caused by four-wheelers. Last I checked.
Well, I will admit that there's been accidents in that area before on trucks tipping over. Never to the extent of diesel fuel.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, of course, you got the slosh in there, and who knows exactly what happened and why. And he may have been. Apparently, he was an experienced driver. Now, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, he's 55 years old. He was no young.
Yeah, and they're saying 30 years of driving experience.
Did it say that there?
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Well, accidents do happen. I'm not saying that he.
Yeah, no, and you know what? You're still responsible. You know, I rear-ended somebody not too long ago because the guy in front of them stopped short. He had to stop short, and I was the last guy in line who didn't quite stop short enough. And that's my, it's my that was my fault. I got to maintain a sure, clear distance, and I shouldn't have been plotting and planning my next court move or something in my head. You know.
That's true. Well, I just realized I didn't realize. I mean, I knew that was busy up there, but how many thousands of cars are going through there? Especially at the end of the weekend. Like coming into the weekend.
Well,
Friday afternoon.
And what happens is it's that spillover effect too, because all your other roads are already at capacity, or people have kind of designed their routes around capacity, and with this area is becoming what other areas have been for a long time, which is very trafficy. So I had an uncle who lived in California, and he lived there, worked for Hughes Aircraft, and he commuted from Woodland Hills to some facility. And his story was that when he first moved to California, it was a 45-minute commute. And when he left California, he still worked in the same building, and he still lived in the same house, but it was a 2-hour and 10-minute commute.
Oh, I believe that. Especially up your way. I don't get up that way often, but boy, the traffic is a heck of a lot more down in the Lebanon area. I go up and down 81 quite a bit for court, okay? And I go up to Sunbury sometimes, and I go out the Turnpike. I like the Turnpike the best because it's the easiest and fastest way to get anywhere if the exit's in the right spot, okay? So the Lebanon County Courthouse, the Berks County Courthouse are very easy to get to. Over the years, though, going 81 south from Carlisle, and I've been driving down to the Chambersburg Courthouse there for 15 years. I can tell you for a fact that 81 has 3 times as much traffic on it now as it did 15 years ago, going up and down between here and Chambersburg. Oh, I believe that. Wait, wasn't it in the paper like 2 weeks ago? Cumberland County had the worst air. Of course, they were blaming it on all the trucks. Worst air.
Yeah, they say from the diesel idling.
Pennsylvania. Well, that's always nice to hear if you live in Cumberland County.
And part of the problem is because of the valley and the way everything's set up. I don't think the wind purges through there that much.
Well, they did say that. They didn't blame it just on the trucks, but they did bring out about all the trucks.
Well, and I think I've heard that at some point in an evening, if everybody's in there tucked away in their sleeper cars and everything, we can have as many as 5,000 trucks in Carlisle in an evening.
I know there's a lot up there when I got up that way then.
So
okay, well, you have a good day.
All right, boss, thanks. 540-0580. Mike, you're on the air. What's going on?
Yes, hi. Also calling about a trucking issue.
Yeah.
A lot of the truck accidents when there's fatals. Now, there was only one this time so far. You never really hear the victims come out afterwards about the accidents and speaking out and saying what happened. Are they getting gag orders per se in the court settlements, or any idea what's going on?
Yeah, well, there's definitely in the court settlements almost always includes a confidentiality clause. Don't talk about it, can't talk about it. The other two things that I think happen, quite frankly, is a lot of times on the interstate, sometimes the people are local, sometimes they aren't. And when they're not local, I don't think the newspaper and the human interest section whips up as much interest in it either. But I do think a lot of times it's because there's a tragedy. The family's not really going to come out and say much. They're coping with it. And then in the meantime, by the time they get a plaintiff's attorney, everybody says, don't. Because here's the problem. If my client, and I've done some, and I do a lot of personal injury work, and if I have a client who's been hurt and they want to go to the newspaper and describe how, such and such store destroyed their life by letting something fall on their head, right? The problem with that is once you let the cat out of the bag, there's no incentive to the other side not to let it become a public matter either. So you only hurt your own negotiation position by being too vocal too early.
I guess I'm looking at more, let's say, from like a MAD perspective, how they more Mothers Against Drunk Driving. You need somebody if they want to take action against some of these trucks who aren't obeying the laws. Mm-hmm. They need to come out and speak out. That's what you almost need. Somebody to get out there and get public about it and say, this is what's been going on. They're trying to keep me quiet.
Right. You need a little girl to get run over so the legislature can name the legislation after the little kid. I mean, that's kind of right how it works these days. Yeah, everything has a, it's Megan's law, it's Susie's law, it's everything has a name because it's supposed to be part of a cause. And you're right, you have to have a cause to move things forward.
Do you know offhand if something like that were to happen and it was one of your clients, would you ever encourage them not to take the gag order?
It all depends on what's in their best interest.
Yeah, if they were saying, look, I don't care about the money, I want this dealt with.
I had a client one time, I'm going to let you go, but listen after the break and I'll tell you about it.
Okay.
540-0580. Welcome back. Carl Ramage here, 540-0580. Oh, boy. We're going to get my mom on the air in the next hour, I hope. Tried to get her on the Durgan show yesterday, but I don't know if that happened to her. I haven't talked to her yet today, so maybe we'll get a hold of her. Maybe not. Maybe I'll have to send the neighbors over to knock on the door and, see if she's in there. Amy.
Yes, hi. Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. What's going on?
Well, I had a couple of legal questions about the gun laws in Pennsylvania.
Now, if you smoke cigars at 4 o'clock, we can answer those over at Harrisburg Beer and Cigar, which we're doing today. But if you want me to answer them now, I will.
Okay, could you answer them now? Because I'm not a cigar person.
Okay.
Sorry.
we can smoke pipes, too, and hookahs.
Well, no, not really.
The peace pipe, too. There was a guy in Durgan yesterday called up and wanted to know about the peace pipe he bought as an Indian artifact and how if he was driving around with it, the police think he was a marijuana user.
Oh, no.
And I was like, they do call it smoking the peace pipe, so...
Well, that's true.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. I
okay,
distracted me.
Here's my question. I have a friend who, back in the 90s,
Everybody has a friend. Nobody actually wants to say about them, but go ahead. Tell me.
Well, he doesn't want me to use his name.
No,
so.
I understand.
But anyway, back in the 90s, he was arrested under the Drug and Cosmetic Act for growing marijuana plants. But he was never convicted. They dismissed the charges because of invasion of privacy on his property.
Yeah.
Okay, and recently he went to go get a concealed weapons permit, and they denied him for that. But he's concerned that he may also be denied to buy any firearms.
Now, a concealed carry permit, if you violate the Drug and Device Cosmetic Act, even a minor portion of it,
right,
then you can be banned from having a concealed carry permit, okay?
Okay.
Although I don't think that's right, by the way, but we'll talk about that later. On the other hand, if he was completely acquitted, then he has the right to get an expungement. And then the next time he applies for a concealed carry permit or goes to buy a gun, nobody would even see that record.
Okay.
So
he could get his record expunged, and then he actually could get the concealed weapons permit as well.
Yep, if the case was dismissed. And actually, technically, they probably should have given it to him if the case was dismissed. The sheriff really can't hold it against him.
Right.
But expunging it will prevent that problem because then there won't be anything for them to point at to hold against him.
Okay. But does he have it? Should he have any worries about possessing a firearm now? Like as far as just owning guns to go hunting?
As long as he wasn't convicted of a misdemeanor carrying more than the potentiality of 2 years in jail or a felony, then he should be fine.
No, he wasn't convicted in any of those things.
Yeah.
So, he's just nervous, and we didn't know how to go about finding the right answer, and we've seen many things, and everybody seems to know the answer, but he doesn't want to have a problem, if the police come knocking on his door and they come in the house and there's guns in the house.
Was he arrested in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
He should just go get his certified criminal record from the state police. Just go to the state police website, pay a few bucks, and get the certified history, and that way he'll know exactly what he has.
Okay. I have looked it up for him previously on the judicial court website in Pennsylvania because I have access to that through my job, and I've looked it up so we know what it is, but we weren't sure about the legality of can he own a firearm.
What was the final disposition of the case?
I don't have it with me right now.
Dismissed, guilty, or not guilty?
It was one of those Latin terms like
nolo prosequi?
Something like that, yeah.
But hopefully not nolo contendere, because that will act as a conviction.
No, it's not a conviction.
If it's all nolo prosequi, it means it was non-pros or no prosecution.
Right, because the state police ended up, the judge found...
The evidence were thrown out, so what happens, the evidence was suppressed, and the government, without evidence to go forward, chose not to proceed with the prosecution, so they null-pros it, and he is entitled to an expungement. I would strongly recommend he follow up with that.
So should we just hire an attorney and file the paperwork for that? Or can we do it ourselves?
You could do it yourself, but I always like to say you can change your own oil too, but sometimes you need a wrench and blocks and oil.
Yeah, it's probably better to have a legal person do that for us.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Amy.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Carl. Have a good afternoon.
You too. 540-0580. James. What's going on, James?
James?
Yes.
Thank you for taking my call. We live in what's left of the country here.
Okay.
And we have about 30 acres surrounded by a couple hundred acres of woods. We have a range here that we shoot a little bit.
Okay.
I shoot very seldom, but my grandkids come and shoot and so forth. Well, last Sunday, there was no shooting, no one here at all day. I went out to a sale that I go to on Sunday evening, just to look at the preview. It's an antique sale to see what's there. When I come home, I pulled in my driveway, and I saw two police cars at the neighbors, two state police. And I stopped and talked to an old Amish couple that I knew that were walking home from church there. I was only there a second or two when the state police cars run up behind me. Police cars at this neighbor's is nothing new. This happens on a quite regular basis, every week or a couple of weeks. So one of them come up and he wanted to know my name, and I said, well, what does this have to do with me? And he didn't like that answer.
Right.
Well, then, apparently, the neighbor said that there was a bullet hit their house. It bounced down over the porch roof and out into the yard. And they had found this bullet. And my name was brought up. Well, he had the state police had the bullet. It appeared to be a 380 9mm or something like that, full metal jacket bullet. I don't know how we got around to. I was carrying a .45, which of course he wanted to see that, and I do have a carry permit. I give him the .45 and the carry permit. Of course, they had to run back to the other police car and run it through all the whatever.
Right.
Well, then.
Oh, you've got to hang over the hour for us here. Everybody's dying to hear the rest of this. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't know if they're dying, but I'll be back in a little bit. 540-0580. When we get back from the break, we'll hear about the story, because I am kind of interested where this is headed.